Yeah, they're free on the board. You shouldn't be in on. Yeah.
Good evening.
Well,
Welcome to the Thursday, April 27,
you get to
2017 meeting of the Monomoy Regional School Committee. Call the meeting to order at 6:35. First item on the agenda is approval of minutes of April 13, 2017. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstained? Unanimous? Public comment. Is there anybody here who would like to address the school committee this evening? Members of the public type people. At public comment? Nope. Okay. Student representative. Let me see. MRMS. That would be middle school, right? Is that you? And you? Come on up.
Hello, my name is Susanna Brown, and I am a student council representative at Monomoy Regional Middle School. All middle school students, through the guidance of the Unwanted Society, collected data about the vernal pools and their inhabitants according to their grade-specific standards. The pools were created last year and are already showing a thriving microcosm of the local environment. Monomoy Regional Middle School is excited to announce that they will be starting a new chapter of the National Junior Honor Society for 6th and 7th graders this spring. We are looking forward to creating an enthusiasm for scholarship, a desire to promote worthy leadership, to generate a high value on citizenship, and encourage the development of character in students at Monomoy. Those students will be inducted into the society at a ceremony to be held on June 9th, followed by a reception for members and their families. The leadership login has been moved to the same day, but later in the evening.
My name is Brooke Stone, and I am the Student Council Secretary. Our SHARK initiative is a school-wide initiative to develop good character in all of our students. With 1 day left, 23 7th graders, 28 6th graders, and 22 5th graders, making 73 students in total have achieved SHARK citizenship. SHARK citizens have signatures in every bubble on this poster. Self-disciplined, hard-working, attentive, respectful, and kind. Yes.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Good job. Nice work. All right, next time on the agenda, recognitions. Mr. Carpenter.
For recognitions, we would like to thank the Art of Charity for their donation of $1,000 for they will allow 150 middle school students to participate in a field trip to the Lyda Museum in Yarmouth, and for the donation of $950 to provide a bus to transport Chatham Elementary first grade students to the Roger Williams Zoo. And lastly, we would like to thank Chatham Bars Inn and the Sharon family for their help and support that allowed for some landscaping work in the courtyard of Chatham Elementary School on the vacation.
Thank you. Any comments, questions? Reports and discussions. First item on the agenda is the Youth Risk Behavior Survey Summer. We have a couple of speakers.
So I can give this a quick preface. We have here tonight, in Think and Think, we have Eliza Hawthorne and Hannah Potter, two seniors that are part of our peer leader program at the high school. And they, along with 5 of their peer leader colleagues, presented yesterday afternoon to the entire high school student body the results of the 2016 Youth Risk Behavior Survey, and then again last night to what I would have hoped to have been a large parent audience, and unfortunately we had a small parent audience came to join us last night with a little over a dozen parents, and Terry was there, Nancy was there, we had members of the administration, counseling staff, both at the middle school and the high school. Members, we had Lieutenant Considine from the Harwich Police Department was there as well. And it was a great presentation, and I thought the best part of it actually was the conversation that happened. The nice thing is it was a small enough group to really have a conversation afterwards. And there is something quite special about our peer leaders. I think I couldn't imagine when I was in my teens standing in front of an auditorium full of their peers talking about sex, drugs, alcohol, tobacco use. Yet they did it flawlessly and then came back and did a command performance with their parents. They can actually go through and do the presentation quite quickly. And what I thought we would do is just, if we give them our attention for about half an hour, they will walk through the data and hopefully give us a chance to have a little bit of a conversation too with them, and we'll go from there. So they're going to jump in on the actual data slides, and we'll in this presentation there's a little comparison of the results from the 2016 survey with the results from 2014 when the school district first took the survey.
Okay, so the first category that we showed everyone was tobacco use. So on this first graph, you can see that the categories of lifetime use of tobacco in the past 30 days, use of chewing tobacco, and use of cigar products are significantly below the state and national levels for Monomoy grades 9 through 12 students. And of concern, our grades 7 through 8 use of tobacco was above the state average. So this is all of the same categories, but on the 2014 survey versus the 2016 survey. So there was a significant reduction in tobacco use in grades 9 through 12 in the past 2 years, while lifetime use has declined in grades 7 and 8, and those who actively use tobacco in the past 30 days has increased slightly. And then on this graph, you can see that there's a general trend that older students are more likely to smoke tobacco in the past 30 days. However, there's a concerning level of active tobacco use in our 9th grade students. This is tobacco use in the past 30 days between 2014 and 2016. So while there was an overall trend of decreased tobacco use by Monomoy students, it's largely reflected by the dramatic reduction in use by sophomores and juniors, but it's also concerning that grades 7 through 9 were more likely to use tobacco in the past 30 days now than 2 years ago. And then this graph is about vaping use, which is the use of electronic cigarettes. And it is a new technology and was not on a topic on the 2014 Youth Risk Behavior Survey. Monomoy students have a slightly lesser use of vaping than the state and national averages. So this was one of our slides called the Parent Messaging Matters. It was more for the group of parents who came last night. So basically this graph shows how much a parent actually sets an example for their kid. So if you smoke, your children are more likely to smoke. If you condone smoking in your home or your cars, your children are more likely to smoke. And now the next topic is alcohol use. So this first graph is showing the overall alcohol consumption for grades, and Monomoy grades 9 through 12 lifetime alcohol use and use in the past 30 days are below the state and national averages. Grades 9 through 12 first use before the age of 13 is above the state average but below the national average. And then of concern, grades 7 through 8 lifetime alcohol use is above the state average, as is binge drinking in the past 30 days for grades 9 through 12. The Youth Risk Survey defined binge drinking as having 4 or more drinks in a row for males and 5 or more drinks in a row for females. This is alcohol use from the 2014 to the 2016 survey. Lifetime alcohol has slightly increased for Monomoy students since then, as has binge drinking in the last 30 days for Monomoy grades 9 through 12. This graph is showing alcohol use in the past 30 days, comparing the 2014 to the 2016 test. And there's a concern in this graph showing that alcohol use in the past 30 days have increased in most grade levels since the 2014 test.
This has binge drinking in the last 30 days from 2014 to 2016. So binge drinking has increased for almost all grade levels since then.
And then this one is alcohol use in the past 30 days by grade, and you can see that juniors are at the high for this at around 47%, and so are seniors.
This is binge drinking the past 30 days by grade. So binge drinking was highest for juniors in this specific survey.
So now this moves on into alcohol use and driving. And there's a concern in this graph where 7% of Monomoy students in grades 9 through 12 report driving after drinking in the past 30 days. There's some good news that the percentage has dropped by half since 2014, but there's still room for more improvement. And similarly, fewer of our students in grade 9 through 12 are reporting that they rode in a car in the past 30 days after the driver had been drinking. And still a concern is that 13% of our students in grade 9 through 12 report riding in cars in the past month driven by a driver who had been drinking.
This is alcohol use and driving comparison. So the percentage of Monomoy students driving after drinking or riding in cars after the driver had been drinking is slightly below the state and national averages, but still much higher than our community wants to see.
And then this is a pie chart showing how the students are getting their alcohol. And largely, they're getting it from their parents' alcohol. And in some cases, older siblings or older friends are buying the alcohol. But most of the alcohol our students drink comes from their own parents' supply at home.
This is another parent messaging matters. So if parents want to cut in half the chance that their children will use alcohol in any given month, just send a clear message that you expect your child not to drink. Turning a blind eye to what your teens might be doing when hanging out alone in the basement or collecting keys at a party to make sure attendees don't drive drunk aren't sending strong messages to not use alcohol.
And then this is kind of the same thing, but just showing the numbers for binge drinking. And basically, if the parents send strong messages to their children that drinking isn't acceptable, they can reduce the chance that their child may binge drink by a significant level.
This is another one about drinking and driving. So sending clear messages about not drinking and driving will reduce the chance of a teen doing it.
And now we move on to marijuana. This graph is just showing the overall marijuana consumption. The categories of Monomoy grades 9 through 12 students' use of marijuana in one's lifetime, the use in the past 30 days, and use before age 13 are all below the state averages. However, grades 7 through 8, lifetime use is slightly above the state average, as is first use before the age of 13.
So these are all the same categories comparing 2014 to 2016. So there's been a decline in marijuana use in grades 9 through 12 since 2014 survey, but a slight increase in grades 7 and 8.
And then this one is also comparing the 2014 survey to the 2016 survey. There's been a significant decrease in marijuana use in the past 30 days for older high school students, but consistent with grades 7 through 8 data. And our 9th graders are reporting more use than the previous survey, which is not good.
Another parent messaging matters. So parents that use marijuana or who condone it will find their children using marijuana 3 times more frequently than those who send a consistent message that smoking marijuana is wrong.
And now move on to prescription medication, other drugs, and distribution. So this first graph is showing the use of other drugs and substances in one's lifetime. As you can see, pain prescription misuse, the use of synthetic marijuana, and use of inhalants are the more common, heavier drugs used by Monomoy students in grades 9 through 12.
This is the comparison of all the same drugs from 2014 to 2016. So pain, prescription misuse, and synthetic marijuana weren't on the 2014 survey, so we don't have any comparison for those. But for many of the heavier drugs, like cocaine, ecstasy, and methamphetamines, the use is down since 2014 for grades 9 to 12.
And this one is showing the lifetime prescription pain misuse by grade. And as you can see, the pain prescription misuse tends to be higher for Monomoy's older students, especially the 10th and 11th graders.
Another parent messaging matters. So if you send a clear message that using prescription drugs not prescribed to an individual is wrong, parents can definitely decrease the chance that a student will do it.
And this graph is showing that the students in grades 9 through 12 report that distribution of illegal drugs at Monomoy schools is roughly equal to the state and national averages.
Now into car safety. This is Monomoy students who use seatbelts when riding in the car driven by someone else. So our older students are less likely to use seatbelts all of the time, but the majority report always using them.
This graph is showing the percent of Monomoy students who have texted or emailed while driving in the past 30 days. And a concern, 30% of our students who drive report texting while driving in the past 30 days. While this is below the state and national averages, the risk is alarming.
Now on to nutrition, weight, and activity. So this is the number of days in the past week that students have ate breakfast. So girls are less likely to eat breakfast every day and more likely to not eat breakfast at all. Nearly half of Monomoy boys, grades 7 through 12, and just over 30% of girls eat breakfast every day.
This is about Monomoy students' perception of their weight. And about half of the Monomoy students, grades 7 through 12, perceive their weight to be about right. Girls were somewhat more likely to perceive themselves as slightly overweight, and boys more likely to perceive themselves as slightly underweight.
This is what students report to be doing about their weight. So boys are more likely to be trying to gain weight, and girls are more likely to be trying to lose weight.
This is showing the percent of Monomoy students reporting at least 60 minutes of physical activity per day in the past week. Our boys grades 7 through 12 are more likely to be physically active for at least 60 minutes all week long, although more students reported being active 7 days per week than any other frequency.
This is hours per day spent watching TV. So Monomoy students generally watch less than 1 hour of TV on an average school day, but nearly 1/5 report watching 3 or more hours each day.
This is hours per day spent playing video or computer games by Monomoy students. Students are more likely to spend time playing video games on an average school day than watching TV. Nearly 30% report playing video games 3 or more hours each day. And then the Youth First survey did not capture any other types of screen time occupying our teens, including screen time for Snapchat, Instagram, FaceTime, and other social medias. For some teens, social media is becoming the dominant screen time.
This is numbers of hours of sleep that Monomoy students get on an average school night. So students in grades 7 and 8 report an average of 8 hours sleep, and grades 9 through 12 report 7 hours of sleep. So with the school start times changing, it'll be interesting to see how this impacts the new survey in 2 years.
And now we're on to sexual behavior. This graph is basically just showing the sexual orientation of our students, grades 9 through 12. And as you can see, the majority of our students are heterosexual with 88%, and only 2% of our students are gay. This is percent of students in grade 9 through 12 who report having had sexual intercourse in their lifetime. So fewer Monomoy students are reported having intercourse in their lifetimes in 2016 versus the 2014 survey. Monomoy averages for lifetime intercourse went down while the state and national averages increased. This is the percent of students in grades 9 through 12 who reported having used drugs or alcohol before the last time they had sexual intercourse. And this is a big, there's a big concern in this graph showing that the percentage of Monomoy students who reported using drugs or alcohol before their last time they had sexual intercourse nearly doubled between the 2014 survey and the 2016 survey. And this is age of first sexual intercourse of the Monomoy students grades 9 through 12 who have had sex. So of those Monomoy students, age 15 is the most frequent age for first sexual activity. This is showing the number of sexual partners in lifetime for Monomoy grades 9 through 12. So it is important to understand that most Monomoy students are not having sex, and 68% of the students have never had sexual intercourse. This is pregnancy prevention methods. So as you can see, the majority of people use condoms. This is the percent of students in grades 9 through 12 reporting having used a condom the last time they had sexual intercourse. And condom use for those students having sexual intercourse has increased significantly since the 2014 survey for Monomoy students in grades 9 through 12. This is percent of Monomoy students in grades 9 through 12 who have been pregnant or gotten someone pregnant. So of the sexually active students, roughly 12% of students report having been pregnant or gotten someone pregnant. This is the percent of Monomoy students in grades 9 through 12 who have been told by medical professionals that they have a sexually transmitted disease in their lifetime. So of those who are sexually active, roughly 12% of them also report having contracted a sexually transmitted disease. This is the percent of Monomoy students who have had discussions with their parents about sexuality. So nearly half of the students responded that their parents have never discussed anything with them. And here's another parent messaging matters. So basically the parents who discuss sexuality and the topic with their teens are less likely to have their teen become pregnant or get someone else pregnant. So this is unwanted sexual contact and dating violence. This is sexual contact against will, comparison between the Monomoy state and national averages. So of significant concern is the results. There is a need to reinforce what consent means with our teens and to clearly convey that forcing another to do a sexual thing is criminal and can result in a student being charged with rape and or assault. Students grade 9 through 12 were above state averages for these topics, but below state and national averages for other forms of dating violence. This is showing the percent of Monomoy students grades 9 through 12 who have dated in the past year and have faced sexual pressure or dating violence. And only about half of the Monomoy students report going on dates in the past year, only 46% of them. But of those who have gone on dates, nearly 17% of them report being forced to do sexual things, and 9% report being hurt on purpose by someone they were dating. And this is percent of Monomoy students who have been physically hurt on purpose by a date. So significantly fewer Monomoy students in grades 9 through 12 have reported being physically hurt by someone on a date in 2016 versus 2014. This is the percent of Monomoy students grades 9 through 12 who have been forced in their lifetime to have sexual intercourse. Slightly more girls, around 12%, report being forced to have sexual intercourse in their lifetimes than boys, which is around 10%. And this forced sexual contact happens across high school grade levels. Now bullying, fighting, and violence. So this is students reporting carrying weapons While nearly 12% of students reported carrying weapons in the past year, only about 3 of them reported doing so at school. And no Monomoy students have ever been found to be in possession of guns. This is bullying and threats to safety comparison. And all the students reported slightly higher levels of bullying than the state average, but fewer Monomoy students reported that they didn't go to school because they felt unsafe than the state average. This is about fighting. Physical fighting of students grades 9 through 12 mirrors the state average, but student reports of fights at school is slightly above the state average. And this is comparing the topic of bullying and threats to safety from the 2014 survey to the 2016 survey. And bullying for grades 9 through 12 has remained largely unchanged for Monomoy students since the 2014 survey. And threats with weapons appear to have increased slightly, while students staying home because they felt safe has declined slightly. Now depression and suicide. This is depression and suicidal behavior. 1/4 of Monomoy students in grades 9 through 12 report feeling depressed in the past year. This is below the state and national averages, but is still highly alarming. In response to such feelings of depression and hopelessness, 15% of Monomoy students report considering suicide in the past year. Equally of concern, about 11% of Monomoy students report attempting suicide in the past year, which is above state and national averages. This is a comparison between depression and suicidal behavior. So there's good news in this graph that in every depression and suicidal behavior category, Monomoy students in grades 9 through 12 have showed improvements over the 2014 survey. And we think that the implementation of depression and suicide awareness programs may correlate to the positive results in this graph. So clearly there is more additional support for our youth that's needed. This is the number of times students have reported attempting suicide in the past year. About 89% of our students report having attempted 0 times, and fewer students reporting attempted suicide in the past year compared to the 2014 results. This is past year depression and suicide attempts, from percentages into actual numbers. So what is concerning is that each percentage point represents a few students, which translate into 47 students in grades 7 through 8 considering suicide in their lifetimes, and 58 students in grades 9 through 12 considering suicide in the past year. And our community really needs to take note on all of these numbers. This concern. This is another parent connection matters. So if our students have adults that they can talk to about important things, whether at home or at school, they are far less likely to be depressed. And this is the same chart, but showing attempted suicide. So basically, if our students have adults that they feel comfortable around and that they can talk to about important things like this, they are also far less likely to attempt suicide or even think about it. Protective factors. This is a graph of the students who think they have an adult that they can talk to. About 80% of Monomoy students in grades 7 through 12 have an adult that they can talk to about important things. Almost 10% of our students feel that they do not have someone to support structure in their lives, and an equal percentage aren't sure if there's an adult that they can talk to. And then this graph shows the percent of students feeling that teachers really care about them. This adult disconnect also manifests itself at school, with 9th graders feeling less likely to have teachers who really care about them. And our goal at Monomoy is to see these numbers get closer to 100% of students feeling cared for and having adults in their lives who they can talk to about important things. And this year's emphasis was really on "You're Important," the theme of that, and the introduction of seminar blocks at the middle school and Jocelyn Hour at the high school. Those are some of our efforts to better connect students with teachers in hopes that all children will have an adult in their lives with whom they can talk to about important things. That's about it. That's it.
Thank you. Nice. Some nice, some not so nice. Any questions, comments? Sharon? Stout.
I just want to say thank you so much for doing this. Clearly, it's really nice to see that there's been some improvement on some things, but it's very disturbing to see that there's so much further we have to go. Do you know if there's any other towns on the Cape doing this?
So, we are the only school district that I know of that did the Youth Risk Behavior Survey this past year on the Cape. I know that Falmouth Public Schools had a grant and did a similar type of survey for about 5 years, and there was some media attention that they got at the end of the summer this past year when they were doing a presentation. You can go onto the Falmouth website and see, they have done a nice job of sort of presenting their survey data. Sandwich Public Schools also did the youth risk survey, I think in maybe it was 2012, and you can go onto their school's website and see the results of that. But we're, at least at the moment, the only district that's been doing this and committed to doing this each year and sharing it and putting it out there, because it's just because your school district doesn't do a survey or a similar survey doesn't mean these things aren't happening. And the way I look at it is, if we can look at what are the risky behaviors our students are struggling with, it gives us opportunities to go and aim programming towards that. And I think for us, after the last presentation of the data in 2014, the numbers on depression and suicide were really struck home, and we put in place depression awareness workshops and signs of suicide programming. And what we see between the 2014 and 2016 surveys is we still have a long ways to go, but in every single category in depression and suicide, we were able to go and pull those numbers down. You see, so there are trends that you see that are very positive throughout the survey, and a lot of them are directly related to us putting in programming to address concerns that we saw.
I really think this is such a strength of ours, and thank you so much for offering to do this for us.
Go ahead. Anybody else? I have a couple questions. Do we know what percentage of the students responded? Was it a different response rate for different questions? Or?
So it was, we had a 92% response rate for grades 7 and 8, and a 90% response rate for the high school grades 9 through 12. What counted against the response rate is you had the entire student body was given the opportunity to take the survey. But some of the keys with the youth risk survey is it's an optional survey. So students can opt to not take it, and that way, those that are taking it hopefully are taking it seriously. So there are 20 students over the grade levels that opted to not take the survey. The surveys themselves then are also analyzed by an individual that we contracted with to make sure if the survey is like doodles all over the place and it does A for everything, or if there's internal inconsistencies with the survey. For instance, the student saying, I've never drank in one question, and turning around the next question saying, I binge drink all the time. Those get kicked out. Or if the survey, if the student is responding that they do everything to the highest level, those things get kicked out. So there were 23 surveys that were rejected for sort of obvious signs that whomever was taking it wasn't taking the survey seriously to land us with those roughly 90% response rates, which is a really good response rate for the survey.
I didn't know. Mr. Russell.
Go ahead.
Well, I have one other question. The slides that have to do with the effect of parents on the numbers, you went through them pretty quick, and I thought, well, maybe I'm not able to interpret the way that the question was written. So overall, were the questions asked as to whether the students felt that the parents thought the activity was wrong for the parents or for the students? you understand my question?
I can sort of give you some clarity on that. It's, those slides involve, you have to go in and compare how students respond to one question on the survey to how they answer another question on the survey. So there, in 2014, there were questions on the youth risk survey that really got at protective factors. So when it came to drugs and alcohol and tobacco, they would ask, sort of, how do your parents feel about, about you or someone drinking 1 or 2 drinks a day? And the students say, my parents feel it's very wrong to my parents, are okay with it. And if you look at the extremes, so what we did is looked at in this case for tobacco, if parents feel that tobacco use is wrong or very wrong, what's the odds that their children have been smoking in the last 30 days versus for those who responded that my parents don't think tobacco use is wrong or it's only a little bit wrong, what's the odds that the student has been smoking? And what you see in each of these cases, there's at least a 50% improvement in terms of the student making, we'll call it, a less risky decision. And if you think about seatbelts, we have this big push publicly to wear seatbelts because seatbelts statistically give you a 50% increase in surviving a accident. So in this sort of presentation, we tried to go and sort of emphasize you want to have a 50% improvement in your child not, you want to reduce the chances that your child's going to get behind a car after they've been, or get in a car after they've been drinking and drive. Well, just have a clear signal. Say, I expect you're not going to drink until you're 21. That you'll see that dramatic reduction. That's what the data is showing us. The reason here it's from 2014 is that the 2016 instrument didn't have the protective factors throughout the survey, so we had to go back to the 2014 and just present that data again. And it's sort of note to self. Sheila House, who is the Harwich Youth Counselor that did yeoman's work getting the grant to allow the survey to happen. Sheila and I now know to make sure that whenever we do this in 2018, to make sure that we have leeway to go and add protective questions in if the survey itself doesn't have them.
I appreciate that. I think my question's a little different, or maybe it was partially answered, but like this one, it says students believe their parents consider smoking tobacco not wrong or only a little bit wrong. My question is, were the parents asked, or were the students asked whether the parents thought it was bad for the students or bad for anyone?
It's bad for the students.
Because they're going to get, I can remember that a lot of people, when my kids were young, or when I was a kid, there was a group of parents that always had this policy. Well, I don't want my kids to drink, but if they're going to drink, then I want them to drink at home. So I'll give them alcohol because they promise not to, which is, I hope that nobody believes that anymore. And the same with smoking. Well, I smoke, so I don't want to be a hypocrite and tell my kids it's bad for them. So you like to believe that those are ancient rules, but it's one thing for a parent, whether it's the tobacco or the alcohol or the marijuana or a lot of other things. It's obviously a completely different scenario if the parent says, well, I can do it, but you're not old enough to do it, versus you just think it's wrong, period. I would think you get a different result.
I think that some parents, who grew up in our age, are struggling with what I might have done versus what I hope my children, won't do. And I think that conversations I sometimes have had with parents is it's important that in the end of this journey your child's having, that your child is looking at you as the parent, not necessarily their friend. Saying it's okay. I don't want you to drink, but it's okay if you drink with me. It starts to send that sort of vague message on what you want your child to do when it comes to alcohol.
Certainly. Anybody else? Mr. Russell.
Excellent job, kids, and I happened to be able to make it last night. I was, as I was a couple of years ago, very impressed with the peer leadership program. The inability at times of an evening or a fall or winter for the real caretakers, the moms and dads, not to get into the numbers that we'd like to see in the auditorium, because there's the connect, and that becomes for us disheartening. I think of this in sort of a parallel with what the school committee is expected to do over the years in creating, let's say, a strategic plan for how do we become better mathematicians, how do we become better English writers, and thus we have the administrators, teachers, principals creating a strategic plan. Well, it's very difficult when I think of this, because all of us as mothers and dads, we for years held our breath as our kids grow up, and a lot of it is fate and bad luck, and other times it's prevention activities, which peer leadership is. And there are a lot of activities that the schools create in order to bring these numbers down. Unfortunately, I think, in my opinion, as moms and dads, involvement starts to go down in high school, the high school kids' involvement in all of these other things continue to rise. And what this risk survey tells me, we have the kids 180, give or take, days for 6.5 hours a day to learn subjects. There's 185 other days where all of these things are going on. Fortunately, the vast majority of our kids in Monomoy are managing their growing upness well. But it's disheartening for us to be the holders of this survey and say, how do we create prevention activities outside of the school hours that we could be proud of other than luck? And that's the challenge. We have a strategic plan here with people working all year long, but there really isn't the opportunity to have something going on where our lives can be changed by this. And unfortunately, it really takes a crisis to get mothers and dads alertness and then into meetings. And that's what we're trying to prevent, a crisis. So great job, and we keep going at it.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Just tell us your names one more time for the people watching on TV.
My name's Hannah, and I'm Eliza Hawthorne.
Thank you very much. Really
Thank you.
appreciate your efforts.
Thank you.
You did a great job presenting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is substitute teacher and substitute nurse pay raise. Mr. Carpenter.
So in your packet is a spreadsheet that shows what our daily substitute teacher rates are, and what our and we have a slightly different rate for non-certified versus certified substitutes, and our nurses. There are two things that have been brought to my attention. First, I have had some of our substitutes bring to my attention that our non-certified number of 70 for a 6.5-hour workday is actually below what the minimum wage is now set. So minimum wage is now $11 per hour, and 70 would be slightly below minimum wage. The other is our nurse substitute pay seems to be now out of line with other school districts, and we're finding it harder, if not almost impossible, to find substitute nurses to come in when we're now the lowest paying district on the Cape for a substitute nurse. So my recommendation is that we bump up our substitute pay. I'd really recommend that we bump up the non-certified to 75, the certified to 85, and our nurses to bump up at least to 125 to find some middle ground there.
Discussion, comments, questions, proposal from Mr. Carpenter. Is there, Ms. Stubb?
So I'm not sure. It looks like that's about $5 more. Is that correct?
It would be $5 more for the substitute teachers. It's 15 more for the nurses. It would have us a little bit above Dennis Sharmuth when it comes to our nurse pay, but they would still be $25 an hour less than Nauset. So,
And do you think that will really help us get them?
I think it will help. It will help some. I think we struggle on this portion of the Cape just with people, but but if you're a substitute nurse and you get a phone call and one district's going to offer you $110 and the other one's going to offer you $150.
That's true. That's true.
Mr. Russell?
Following up with Sharon, Scott, I suppose there's how much is in the kitty to do this, but not only ourselves, I would say, have a certain range of driving to either accept a yes at DY or a Nauset and one in the middle. What would it look like fiscally if we mirrored Nauset? Assuming, yes, assuming that a handful of our substitutes must go back and forth within a 15-minute ride. I haven't done the numbers, but for $5, I find it maybe we'd retain some people with that call coming in.
Ms. Izernio, would that be something you would like to get back to us on another occasion? More specific answer, or don't want to don't want to gut your question?
The only analysis that I did was the impact if we increase the nurse's sub rate to $150 a day. I just looked at the highest one. And if year to date, we've only spent $2,035 on substitute nurses. I don't know if it's because we have difficult time getting them or really just not the need so much. So if we had been paying $150, that would have made a $740 impact for the whole year at $150. I have not done an analysis of the teaching assistants or the sub-teachers, just the nurses.
Further comments? It strikes me that, well, I guess let me ask a question first. How many nurses do we have? Do we have one in each school? So, pardon?
Generally, occasionally we'll have someone with particularly a Harvard Elementary.
Is it possible, is it likely that if a nurse was out ill or for some reason unavailable, that a nurse from another school would generally be covering for two schools? Or do we always try to get a substitute under those circumstances? Or
We try.
yeah, to varying levels of success, or I assume, like anything else in life. I don't know how many substitute nurses there are. I mean, I'm assuming there's quite a bit more substitute teachers in the pool, especially since we allow for non-certified as well as certified. But I wonder how many possible nurses are available even on the Cape for for being substitute nurses. I wonder if we ought to consider paying a higher rate so that we have a better chance of getting the substitute nurses when we need it. The difference between given the amount of time we've used them and the difference between 25 and 50 is not a significant amount. So, any thoughts on that, Mr. Richardson?
I just think if we move a large amount like that, it sets precedent for other fields in the education field, not just nurses.
In terms of teacher salaries?
Well, if, I don't know, say custodians or something, we needed, okay, so we look at their substitute monies and say, it might be hard to get one, so let's up the ante. I just think this is setting a precedent to do that.
Anybody else? Mr. Duval?
My thought being that Massachusetts has a good schedule out there for how minimum wage is going to be going up. Would it not behoove us to include what the minimum wage increase for next January is going to be, so we're not sitting here voting on it again?
Do we know what that is?
I believe it's another $1 an hour.
So you've got your calculator there where you're figuring that we're going to be a few dollars behind even.
Again, you know, it's just going to roll back again. So if we were to be proactive and do it now, so it goes all the way through the end of next school year, rather than having to do it twice.
So what would that be? What did you say, there's an average of about 7 hours?
6.5.
6.5, so that would be 78 at a minimum for the non-certified.
And 85 would still be, obviously would still be within that amount, right? Okay. Well, we're in discussion stage. We haven't, nobody's made a motion, so. Ms. Stout.
I just have a question.
Sure.
It appears to me, but I don't know that much about it, that certified and experienced, like retired teachers that might not keep up their certification, would maybe value more than the small difference between somebody that just has a bachelor's degree. I don't know. That seems like a very small differential.
Mr. Russell?
At the risk of passing the buck, I feel ill-equipped to, I named a price matching NOSIT, but I'd rely on Katie and Scott and the team to review what it looks like and have them, if we've got time, to come back and say, here's a number we think we can live with fiscally and at the same time is reasonable, given the range of towns that we're in competition with. So I don't know if we're this evening.
We've had a recommendation from the superintendent specifically. I might ask Mr. Carpenter whether you think Mr. Duval's point is well taken about that 78 versus 75.
I think it's a reasonable suggestion. I think that we would, roughly speaking, we'd be increasing our substitute hourly pay by 15%, so we can imagine that the budgetary impact would be roughly increasing our substitute teacher line by 15%.
Does anybody want to make a motion, one way or the other?
I move that we set the substitute pay daily for teacher non-certified to $78 per day, and for certified substitutes at $85 a day, and that we increase the nurses' substitute pay to $125 per day.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Ms. Richardson?
I was just curious about the $78, as why wouldn't the certified go to maybe 88?
Because you're still covering the,
Oh, okay. Yeah,
it's more covering the increase in the minimum wage.
I get it.
Ms. Long?
And besides the minimum wage, are we not trying to stay in parallel with NOSIT? Because the nurse wage, we were trying to stay parallel, would be 150, and you said 125. So 125 is just addressing the minimum wage.
No, it's to get it in a more competitive price.
Further discussion? So the motion is $78 for non-certified teachers, $85 for certified teachers, and $125 for substitute nurses. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Or any abstaining? It's unanimous vote. Thank you, Mr. Carpenter. Next up, the fiscal 2018 budget and the question of the use of E&D funds to reduce the assessments to the two towns. We've had discussions about this at previous meetings, and also in presentations and discussions with the selectmen of both towns. Anything further that you want to say about this, Mr. Carpenter?
No, at the past school committee meeting, or prior to that, I had suggested that we look at using an additional $38,000 out of excess and efficiency. We would end up helping decrease the assessments on the two towns, and that was sort of the conversation we had been having.
Whereas this is an amendment to the assessments in the two towns, of course, it does require a vote of the school committee. Would anybody want to make a motion? Mr. Russell?
I would move that we transfer $38,000. That, Mr. Carpenter, is that even $38,000 out of our present E&D line item in order to impact the new assessment figure?
To apply towards the assessment of the two towns?
Yes.
That's sufficient wording? Is there any? Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Ms. Scott?
Don't we need to have actual numbers? We need to vote on actual,
Ms. Isernia, can you address that issue? Do you have a better way of accomplishing what clearly Mr. Russell is trying to accomplish?
Unfortunately, I didn't bring the assessment sheet with me, I'm sorry to say. Oh, just a minute.
March 24th. Here, you can take mine too, and you can see which one of those works. That one's March 24th.
So is the concern that we have to vote the different categories?
Or just the final assessment numbers?
Okay, so, our original assessment, we were going to use $333,326 in E&D to support the FY18 budget. The new amount will be $371,326 of B&D to support the FY18 budget. So that could be one vote.
But the assessment to each town is not changing, just the funding source. Oh, no, it does change.
It does
I'm sorry,
change,
yep,
yes.
obviously, yep.
So,
I'm confusing budget assessment.
Should we maybe come back to it so that she's not under pressure?
Yeah, well,
well, I do have the,
I just know that when I have to work under pressure
no,
with
no,
numbers,
one and one equals two, right?
back in that a couple minutes?
Okay.
Sure. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We'll get back in. The next item on the agenda is the district review report. Mr. Carpenter.
So in your packets is something that's literally hot off the presses. I think last time we had a meeting, I told you that we anticipated that the state would publish our district review report before our next meeting. And it looked like yesterday afternoon it came out, and today I've been exchanging emails with DESE on setting up a next steps meeting with them. But we're finally at a place where we can actually share the report with you. What I'd like to just quickly do is just from the executive summary read the strengths and recommendations, and then briefly share with you some of the things that we have been doing, knowing that the report is coming out and having seen some drafts. At our next school committee meeting, we'll have this report. At our next school committee meeting, we'll have this report back on the agenda with the next steps that we'll be taking in response to the report. So, I shared with the committee and with our community my summary after meeting with the team that came down from the state. They gave us sort of a verbal Here's their verbal executive summary, so I shared that. So much of that is again reiterated here, but they refer to these strengths. They say the district has established a solid foundation upon which to build stronger instructional practices, as well as systems of students, assessment, and support. The strong foundation was apparent in each of the standards reviewed by the team. The school committee and administration have developed and aligned planning documents that help to focus the district on common work. The collegiality of the administrative team and the coordination and planning efforts are an important part of the foundation that the district has established. Further, the superintendent, school committee, and town officials have developed a positive working relationship between member towns and the district. The result is that Monomoy Regional School District has a transparent, open budget process and is a well-funded school system. Then they have a section that they refer to as challenges and areas of growth. They say the district has not developed a sufficient system of accountability to ensure that its stated intentions are realized in practice. For instance, in the area of curriculum and instruction, the review team noted evidence of well-documented curriculum. However, in the 63 classrooms observed in all district schools, the team found little evidence that the stated curriculum informed classroom instruction. Instead, the review team observed inconsistencies in the quality of instruction and limited implementation of the district's stated instructional priorities. A similar disconnect between the stated intentions and practice was found in the team's review of the Human Resources and Professional Development Standard. While the district has provided multiple professional development opportunities and structures to promote professional learning, the review team found little evidence that the district has leveraged its educator evaluation system to ensure improved outcomes for teachers and students. The district also has not used data to promote improved student achievement. The district has not used performance data to establish its instructional and intervention priorities, compromising the effectiveness of the student support structures without using performance benchmarks to inform instruction and student support. The district's ability to improve student achievement is limited. Their recommendations: the district should continue working to use data systematically as it establishes its priorities, promotes a culture of growth-oriented supervision and evaluation, and refines instructional and student support. A critical analysis of data and the establishment of clear improvement targets could serve as the glue that binds together the strong organizational work that Harwich and Chatham have done in the establishment of the Monomoy Regional School District. I think what to put this into some context, and I believe I shared this with the committee when the team came down. There was something about just the time in which this committee came that sort of was encapsulated where we are as a district, and I would say in some ways how far we've come and where we're heading. We had this time last year we would have been having a presentation from Dr. Blanchard on the MAP assessments. So we had started and rolled out the MAP assessments, and here comes this visiting team, and they're in our conference room in central office at a November morning, and they were starting their work at 8 o'clock in the morning, and here over the intercom at 8 o'clock in the morning, that same morning, is Principal Wilson getting on the announcements and talking about the seminar block that the middle school was instituting that day, and just kind of guiding the students on, you'll be heading off to seminar, and the seminar that they were all heading off to is based on the MAP testing they had, and was really focused on using assessment data to individualize and focus what they were doing. So they were coming in, I think, in many ways at the cusp of where we were as a district. For me, when I got the draft of the report, I thought for me the most jarring thing was when I looked at the instructional inventory, which are the last pages of this report. And for me, I've been in so many classrooms, and I've seen great teaching, in many, many classrooms, and there are times where, there are things I'll go back into the principal afterwards and say, hey, here's somebody who might need some support, or, here's some areas that we need to work on. So when we look at the instructional inventory, there seems to be a disconnect between, I think, how the district and our teachers perceive themselves and what the visiting team saw. So we started a process with our instructional leaders, both at the high school and middle school level and at the elementary level, having them reflect on that same instructional inventory, asking, when it comes to things like differentiation, is that something that we are strong at, that we're moderate at, that we're weak at? And so each of our teacher leaders and department heads were ranking where they were, or where they saw instruction, and then having a conversation with, okay, here's how you've ranked things. Let's go look at when a team from outside comes in. And so yesterday we were having this conversation with the elementary teacher leaders, and using just differentiation as an example. I think for elementary teachers, they would look at differentiation as like clearly in their wheelhouse. It's something that they do, every day. And I know it's something that if I or any of our principals sit in a classroom, we're going to see examples of differentiation in an elementary classroom any day. And when you look at the instructional inventory, you're not seeing that same level of differentiation that you had hoped to. And that part of the conversation that we were having is differentiation isn't something that that happens between 1:30 and 2. This is a group that came in and is looking at, in this window of time, in the 10-15 minutes that you're in your classroom, are they seeing examples, clear examples of differentiation? If they are, check. If they aren't, then it's showing up as not being there. And so it's starting these new conversations on going back and really looking at what is great instruction in the classroom, and making sure that we're committed to seeing critical thinking throughout the day, throughout the lessons. The same thing with differentiation, student engagement, and all the other things that you see within the inventory. So, as I said, my intent is to give this. It's a lot to mull over and read, but to come back here for our next meeting and walk you through our meeting on next steps with the state and where we're taking it above and beyond the conversations that we started with our teacher leaders and department heads.
Any questions? Any comments? Next up.
I guess I have one question. Since you bring differentiation, those different strategies that the teachers are using, or that are being looked at by, whether it's an in-house evaluator or the people in the state, do the teachers have like a list of what those are and what the explanation for it, so they can keep abreast of making sure they do that regularly?
Well, I think all of our teachers have I think of it, my metaphor is a quiver of arrows that, all sorts of different ways that they can differentiate. And so I think they all have ideas and use different techniques to differentiate. My reflection, I think part of the discussion is, are we, if we look at that's just one of many different things that they're looking at, but are we doing it consistently throughout each lesson, throughout each day, as opposed to, I'm differentiating, but it's happening, it's happening here and there over the course of the day, as opposed to throughout the whole lesson. The same thing goes with critical thinking. Is it embedded throughout your lessons, Or is it just happening during this one subject, this one part, this one part of the day? So just some quick overview on the instructional inventory. The middle school across the board really came out strongest, and I think that's a credit to Mark. And I know that the Principal Wilson would also say that it's not where he wants it, nor is it where any of us wants to see it. The state shifted in the last 2 years when they were doing district reviews to a different instructional inventory. So I went and looked at Barnstable High School from 2014 and looked at their instructional inventory. I'm like, boy, it's like, it looks like every classroom they walked into, people were walking on water. And then I was like, okay, it's a different tool. It's a different way that they're looking at it. They're really coming and saying, in this window of time that I'm here, did I see critical thinking going on? Did I see, clear objectives? Did I see, and it's sort of check, and then they did a nice job of getting into a number of different classrooms in a very short period of time. And this is their sort of summary of this is what we saw happening in classrooms. But it gives us a nice starting point to say, okay, here's what we're seeing, and here's our commitment to seeing things improve in our instructional inventory.
Any further comments or questions? Ms. Richardson.
I do hear what you're saying, and I agree with it. They are looking at a short period of time. I have been involved with some of these evaluations as an educator, both on the receiving end and on the state level of the Department of Education. And my experience, and it is limited, is that they're pretty much right on, even though it is a short window of what they're looking at. Just my experience.
Thank you. Anybody else? So more to come.
More to come, because I think there's, throughout, they look at leadership and governance, curriculum instruction, assessment, human resources, student support, financial and asset management. And in each section, they have commendations, they have recommendations, and at the end of the day, just like when you have the NESC comes in to do a high school reaccreditation study, you need to go and look at it and say, okay, what do we learn and what do we put in place to improve? And that's what the intent of a NES visit is, and that's what the intent of a comprehensive district review visit is.
Thank you. Okay, moving back an item to the fiscal 2018 budget. Mr. Russell, have you had an opportunity to amend your motion?
I think I do, and thank you, Kitty. Let me, for the benefit of the audience and ourselves, review what we're doing, then I'll turn that into a motion. Last February, we voted through our E&D budget $333,326. If we vote this motion in the affirmative, the new E&D would be $371,326. That's the total of that $38,000. How that impact the two towns' assessment, which really it's targeted, Harwich's assessment would be $24,759,749. That's $27,922 less than what it is right now from our February vote. The Chatham assessment is $8,941,137. That would go down by the number of $10,078. So the new total would be $33,700,886. So I would...
Two separate motions. One for E&D, and then one separate motion for the assessment to the towns.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Let me try the first one. I move that we use an additional $38,000 out of our E&D account to support the fiscal 18 budget.
Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? Mr. Duval?
Nope.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? So that's unanimous. Unanimous vote, Mr. Russell.
I move that the fiscal 18 assessment for Howard will be $24,759,749. $759,749. I'll try better on the second. Chatham is a smaller town. In addition to that, the Chatham assessment will be $8,941,137.
Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? There's another unanimous vote. Thank you very much, Mr. Russell. Next item on the agenda, is number 5 on the agenda, is norms and protocols. I put this back on the agenda, as I mentioned to the members in an email. At our last meeting, we had a discussion regarding norms and protocols, and also some complaints that were officially raised with regard to certain members of the committee. The committee reported the results of the meeting in the executive session with regard to the issue involving Mr. Russell, and the committee reported its official position on that complaint. We were going very late last time. There was a lot of discussion, and I did not want to leave it as, I didn't want to prevent anybody from having an opportunity to present any kind of position they wanted the committee to take, or any further discussion or comments they wanted to make individually. I'm not seeking any particular motion or suggestion or anything else, but I was not sure that everyone was given an opportunity to present how they wanted to resolve the complaint, respond to the complaint, dismiss the complaint, or any other sort of response. So that's why I put it on the agenda, and I open up the floor. Ms. Stout.
Have you had a chance to talk to Dorothy Presser from the woman that worked with us on developing this?
I spoke to Mr. Kuchar. Mr. Kuchar.
What she had said when I had called her prior to the last meeting was that our norms and protocols are a working relationship between school committee members to help us work together better, and that it's not for the intent to do violations. That's not addressed at all in our norms and protocols, but rather to remind each other, which none of us did. I mean, I think that meeting caught us all off guard because no one thought to mention, you're overstepping your bounds. I don't think we use, I don't think we're skilled at using those. And basically just for us to use to have better relations rather than use them as tools for reprimands. And the recommendation was to go to mediation if there was a problem.
That's in fact one of the protocol
That's right.
that we provide. Any further comments? Discussion?
Well, Mr. Chair, I don't know how we create protocols back in October and approve them. And whether it was for an in-house or in this case the department heads, in addition to a member, Nancy, stating that there was some violations of those codes. I responded in time, asked the committee to vote whether they thought I was in violation. And I thought it's only consistent for the other two people on board to, and let's have a clean slate, say they did nothing wrong and vote on it, or they did and they apologize, or they don't, and we move on, which allows you to send a note to the department heads here at Monomoy Region saying we did take some action. I really don't think one out of the three should be expected to explain away what the teachers in good faith thought was happening. And the explanation, I think, 2 weeks ago really didn't satisfy me as far as the reasons why the protocol was effective. So I think without really moving on with another hour and a half discussion, either we take a committee vote and we move from there.
Further discussion, comments? Ms. Scott?
I agree with what Sharon said in that the norms and protocols, the design of them is for us to use for each other. And I agree also, you said that we're obviously not very well skilled in them. Because if we were, we would have had that conversation at the time and said, you know what, point of order, or however we want to go about doing it, let's stop and think before we do that. And I also feel that having the department heads, the teacher leaders of the high school, take the time to draft that very thorough letter to us, it gave me the opportunity to think and look back and say, we do need to pay more attention to that because, and I said this at the last meeting, that our words and our tones are important, and we need to remember that because whether people are watching us or not, we do have people in the audience. And we had additional letters from parents and employees of the district who were at the meeting and commented. So I think it's a learning experience at this point. I think it's, we need to use our norms and protocols to guide each other at the meeting at the time and not make it as you did this, you were wrong, we need to do this. And I also feel at this point there needs to be some sort of closure to what the department heads provided us. Because, after being on the school committee for 5.5 years, or more than 5.5 years, that's never happened before. We've never received a letter from any sort of member of our staff basically telling us that they felt hurt. And that's what that is, bottom line. They felt hurt. They felt that we as a committee were attacking them and using poor language towards presenters. And that needs to be addressed somehow.
Estelle?
Well, I could just say that I did meet with the person that was presenting the social studies curriculum today.
Could you speak up a little? I can't hear you.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Steve, too. I did meet with the head of the social studies curriculum today, and I did tell him that I didn't mean to shoot the messenger, and we had a nice talk. So I think that portion is resolved.
Further comments, discussion? Ms. Long?
I think just go back to Mr. Russell, that just to stay consistent with all members, that we probably should follow the same conduct that we did with him for everyone involved, just to be consistent.
Therefore, Ms. Ryder?
I would just say that there's nothing in the norms and protocols that says we have to take a vote on an alleged violation, which actually is a really strong and terrible word in this situation that I don't agree with using. It was Mr. Russell's request, if I'm not mistaken, that we vote on how we felt about his supposed transgression. I think that's a better word, transgression. I don't think that we necessarily need to vote on my and Sharon's supposed transgressions. I don't really carry away, but in the norms and protocols it says if there's a dispute, it will be mediated by the chair. So it's a situation of mediation. And as Nancy has stated, it's a situation where we should be reminding each other of how we should be operating as a committee. And that's really the intent of the norms and protocols. It's also worth repeating that the norms and protocols are for us to internally govern ourselves, and they are not to be imposed by anyone from the outside, which was very clearly stated in the NASC governing document in their recommendations. And it's very clearly stated.
Well, the only concern I have with what you just said is the last part. I'm not sure that the Mass Association of School Committees either has the authority or the intention to direct how a school committee will deal with its own norms and protocols. So I only take issue with your position that we don't have the authority as a committee to act in a way that the committee feels is appropriate towards alleged transgressions or not following our norms and protocols. Mr. Duval?
I would like to make a motion that our chairman send a letter to the department heads of the high school apologizing for the treatment that they received at the hands of this committee at their presentation of the program of studies, and that we as a group sincerely apologize to the public at large for the amount of time we've spent going over this, which is...
Is there a second before we discuss it further? Is there a second to his motion? Second? Ms. Scott, seconded. Ms. Richardson?
I was hoping the subject was going to be put to bed for 2017, but since it continues, I'm going to add my thoughts to this discussion, and I'll probably make it worse than it already is. But I think the school committee represents the citizens of Howard and Chatham. And we are not in the classrooms, and yet it is our commitment to comprehend what is happening in the classrooms. We are passionate about our responsibility, and for that I am thankful. And so asking questions and making really heartfelt statements is to be commended in my eyes. And how else are we going to begin to understand what is happening with the curriculum, special schedules, clubs, and author views that are representative to the community? And maybe we need more government classes or civics classes only for the purpose of understanding debate and give and take, because it's not happening.
We as a committee need...
No, what I mean is our role in the teacher's response to our role is not a happening that's positive. And so that's why I'm thinking, well, maybe we do need more civics and government courses to learn debate and give and take.
Ms. Ryder?
Thank you, Donna, for your thoughts. I concur with them. As elected officials that represent the citizens of Chatham and Harwich, it is not only our right, but it is also our responsibility to ask questions and to make statements that we believe in. I, for one, do not think an apology is warranted. There was no personal attack on any person, except perhaps by Mr. Duval attacking his fellow school committee members by saying that he was embarrassed to be serving with us, which I found to be a personal attack, and Mr. Burkhead's attack also in his comments. Aside from that, there was no personal attack by Ms. Stout or myself or Terry Russell on any member of the public, any member of the staff. It was all directed toward curriculum and our disagreement with curriculum or our questions about curriculum, and that is our right and our responsibility.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Russell?
These will be my final comments. I don't care about a vote or a less cent, although I'll vote for that. But this is a learning experience for we as members of this committee. And if, as we sit and listen to ourselves, if we can't see in the last year and a half, divisiveness versus consensus building, cooperation versus conflict, then there's something wrong with where we're approaching. And we should learn, all of us, from that, from whatever we do with our colleagues teaching in this school as far as responding to them. It's a clear message to me, the tone is important. And we need to manage all of our tones. And that's, I think, what the staff and the department heads picked up immediately, as I did. And if that doesn't require an apology or some type of explanation to clear the air, then I don't know what does. So I don't really care about our responsibility to ask questions. That's a fully obvious thing that what our role is. It's how it's asked and what tone we share with each other. And unfortunately, at times during our past year and a half, that's been a stumbling block for us as members of this committee. And hopefully something may come out of this where we've become a little bit more unified and understanding so we don't have to parse our words. But we're missing an opportunity here. And it's unfortunate that we're not able to, as we all sit here and say, yes, we recognize that that could have been managed far better than it was.
Further discussion, Ms. Long.
I just want to state, and even for the public, that, I've been on this committee for 8 months, running again for another position, and I've never been more disappointed in the behavior of adults, more so than I have been on this committee, especially considering that we're role models and we're representatives of our towns. I just sit here and I'm furious inside because it's simple. It's just so simple. And we're honoring norms and protocols. We're not honoring norms and protocols. They're used as a guideline. I'm a mother, but I'm not your mother. Everyone is responsible for their own behavior here. It is not my job to tell you how to act, how to talk, and how to act professional at these meetings. It's not. Don't lay it on me. I didn't do it. If you need me to babysit you, that's a whole other set of norms and protocols as far as I'm concerned. As far as I'm concerned, I want no part of a letter from the group. It's individually based for those who are involved. And if they want to write a letter and apologize and sign that themselves, that's fine. But I have nothing to apologize for as far as I'm concerned. I'm sorry.
Further discussion? Just for the sake of clarity, because it obviously is much the topic of disagreement, I would make sure that the motion as stated would be reread into the record so that we know exactly what we're voting on.
Mr. Duvall moved that the chair send a letter to the high school department heads apologizing for the treatment that they received at the hands of the committee at the presentation of the program of studies, and that we as a group sincerely apologize to the public at large for the time we have spent on this issue.
That's the motion. The motion was seconded. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion as read, say aye.
Aye.
Could all those who in favor of the motion raise their hand, please, so I can be clear? That's 2 votes. And against?
No.
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 Okay. Well, the motion does not pass.
I would have abstained.
I'm sorry?
I would have abstained.
Are you abstaining?
Yes.
Stout abstains. All right, thank you. Next up, subcommittee reports. Are there any subcommittee reports? Okay. Superintendent's report, Mr. Carpenter.
Just an update for the chair. We have had a pattern of the outgoing chair being the school committee representative at graduation to speak. And we are presented in a unique situation this time around where the outgoing chair, by the time graduation comes around, will not be on the committee. So the chair tasked me with reaching out to some school committee members, and we have been on because as the outgoing chair, it's been Chatham, Harwich. So I have reached out to Donna, who has graciously offered to give her sage words at graduation.
And hopefully it won't be on a rant.
But so thank you so much, Donna. I also want to just kind of put a little bit of closure on my end to the last topic. I want to thank Sharon for reaching out to me and to have me reach out to David Alexander. I know that he really appreciated that conversation, and I think it went a long ways to putting some good closure there. So so thank you. In terms of the building project closeout, oh, how I wish I'd be coming here today saying it's a wrap. Oh, how I wish. So we had what we had hoped would be our final building committee meeting last is it Monday?
Monday.
And because over the vacation week, they had moved the one sensor that needed to get moved and reprogrammed it, and then realized that it appears that some of these shutdowns of the HVAC system are related to a different device that was put in 2 years ago on these units that regulates and protects the units from phase and voltage imbalances. So that has started a series of different conversations on, because apparently when a phase or voltage imbalance must hit one of these units, it sends a message saying that it's going into like a freeze alarm. So there's not a differentiation between, is it freezing or is it voltage? So, so on the surface it seems that it should just be somebody going in and programming, and but programming involves a lot of different parties to make that happen. So we are eagerly trying to go and work through this, this last piece, and hopefully someday, before we are here much longer, we'll be able to actually hit the closeout point. I also, in terms of just kind of just efforts of one of the building committee members, I just want to give David Morand some kudos. David is a parent of students in the district. He also is an engineer by training, and David spent 4 hours with our head custodian for the high school here this weekend, going up one side of this building, down the other, just looking for things that that we should be addressing with the contractor. And David, if anything, is thorough. And I think I could walk through a room and not see anything, and David will see the smallest little crack here and there. And so he gave us a nice list of things that would help us with the long-term maintenance and protection of this project that the taxpayers have. Last thing is just the elementary task force. Last week, I was, or last time we met, I had spoke to you about the need to move a kindergarten teacher over to Harwich Elementary School. Yesterday, when we were meeting with the elementary school department heads, I was explaining to them the sort of nuts and bolts of why, and it was kind of striking. To me, there were a couple of the teachers that said, I'm glad that you had this conversation with us and had this decision, because we were about to have a conversation with you about our concerns. And so it's also clear that even with that group, there's no consensus as to what's the right solution for us. And it's all the more reason why having a broad-based group to really look at what would make the best sense for elementary education in our two towns, and I think it would be really difficult for us to move forward with a regional agreement amendment that without having consensus around elementary school, because I think if we can build the consensus, and I think we really need to build that consensus on what's the model that's right for us, then we can get consensus behind a regional agreement. But if we don't have that, I think the regional agreement's not going to fly, and then we're stuck exactly as we are right now.
I was just curious how you made the decision of what staff person to send.
A lot of it was just was looking at just the teams that we have. The staff member that we chose to send was actually a staff member who came originally from Harwich, so they have connections in Harwich too. One of the other things that I think was behind the choice is it leaves us with two extremely experienced kindergarten teachers at Chatham Elementary School who have very different styles, and I think it gives us a chance to look at which sort of approach to kindergarten has the best bang at the other side. Which of those students are more ready for first grade. So it gives us, rather than have an experienced person and an inexperienced person, and we're trying to compare those two, it gives us a good sort of way to look at two different styles and to learn from that and say, okay, how much of this can we bring into the other classroom? So it was a long, thoughtful decision between Rob and Sam and myself.
So I'm just curious about the process. So at our, I think it was the last meeting, or maybe at the one before, we talked about having a community forum to try to find out how people felt about busing kids from Chatham or to Chatham or something like that. So what are you seeing as the next step for this?
I think we need to get a sizable group of people that can commit to investigating the different models that are out there for elementary schools. So I think we have things to weigh as a community. Is 2 sections per grade level at an elementary school too small down the road? Is 6 sections too large? Is there some happy medium there? But I also think that we have the opportunity to go and look at is there benefit to bringing all of the kindergartners together and having a situation that some communities have used. I'll admit the downside is that there's an additional transition. The plus side is that you do have all of your pre-K is all together, your kindergarten teachers together. So you have more opportunities for collaboration. But again, I think we need to go and look at what are the successes that we've seen out there, what's the research saying on the different models, and what's right for us. And that's going to take a team to research, to become knowledgeable, and to make a recommendation to bring back here, after bringing in lots of different sort of surveys, voices, and knowledge.
So for next year, do we have enough room to have those kids over at Harwich Elementary?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Further discussion? That would be the end of your report, Mr. Carpenter.
That is.
We have one action item left. Nancy's personal favorite, surplus equipment.
I move for surplus from Chatham Elementary School, flat screen monitors, all-in-one printer copier, 29 flat screen monitors, 1 all-in-one printer, 3 desktop PCs, 4 more desktop PCs, 1 color printer, 29 PS2 keyboards, 1 tape recorder from Monomoy Regional Middle School, 4 switches. Also from Monomoy Middle School, 7 laser black and white printers. Also from Monomoy Middle School, 19 flat screen monitors. And also from Monomoy Middle School, 9 tower computers, 5 SFF desktop computers, 4 full desktop computers, 21 additional SFF desktop computers.
That package is a fair trade. Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstained? Unanimous vote. At the risk of surprising our spouses, I will motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Wait for the lights to go out at 10 o'clock.
Probably do.
You're welcome.
About that.
I grabbed that just for you.
Katie, is there more, or is it just these two? I did that. Oh, 1 and 2, and then that one? I did those two. Perfect, and then I already did that. Great.
I'm very glad you did that.
Good night, everybody.
Good, thank you. Just coming to do it.